Right now, we have a far-left liberal socialist agenda that is trying to rewrite our nation's history. Whether it be the 1619 Project, CRT, DEI, whatever it is, it's a radical socialist agenda that is trying to bring our nation and its founding principles down. Radical revisionists are portraying our founding fathers as corrupt and racist, one who was out to suppress minorities for their own financial gain. I want to tell you that is a lie. That is not true. It's just not true. Read the history. Those who are peddling that propaganda are motivated by an ungodly agenda that dislikes or even would say hate what America is about. 249 years ago, 56 men gathered in the Pennsylvania State House to draft the Declaration of Independence. It was a great moment for our nation. And that's what we celebrate next week, the 4th of July. They didn't have the insanity that we have today in our nation's capital. They didn't have the big news media outlets telling the general population absolute lies. There was no ACLU declaring that God has no place in government. In 1776, we didn't have special interest groups promoting sexual deviant lifestyles, indoctrinating young children with gender-blending deceptions. Can I just say this morning? In the midst of moral insanity, it is incumbent upon pastors and church leaders to have a divine responsibility to call out the sins of a nation. So pastors must rise up, speak out, and Christians must do the same thing. When our founding fathers came together to write the Constitution, there wasn't any radical socialist alphabet group influencing the government. We didn't have presidents and politicians who were apologizing for American exceptionalism. These 56 men were not greedy. They were not politically motivated. These men jeopardized their lives to establish this nation called the United States of America, which has become, in 249 years, the greatest nation ever in the history of mankind. And because of that, it has given the church a platform to be the greatest missionary and promoter of the gospel in the history of the world. None other nation has done that except the United States of America. These founding patriots made a pledge to each other. They said this: we pledge our lives, our fortune, and our sacred honor. You may be numb this morning. We pledge our lives, our fortune, and our sacred honor. Can I ask you, you think our governor would do that? Would he pledge his life, his fortune, and his sacred honor for the good of our states? Thomas Jefferson finished writing the Declaration of Independence in 17 days. And in 2025, we have politicians that can't even find a bathroom in 17 days. That's how confused they are. When King George raised the price of tea by 0.5%, these patriots formed a peaceful protest in Boston. They did not throw bricks at law enforcement. They didn't spray paint government buildings and express their vulgarity. On December 16th, 1773, these patriots threw King George's tea in the Boston Harbor. That's why it's called the Boston Tea Party. And I hope they still teach that in our public schools. King George denounced these men as traitors. And if captured, he would have them hung by their neck. The reward of establishing this nation 249 years ago would be extreme hardship, and that is the truth. Thomas Nelson of Virginia gave $2 million out of his own wealth to provide provision to our fighting men of the Revolutionary War. After the war, he would personally pay back every loan against the new republic, and it wiped out his entire family estate and was never reimbursed by the government. In the final battle for freedom at Yorktown, Nelson admonished George Washington to fire on his own residence. Why? Because General Cornwall had taken refuge there. Washington fired and reduced that house to rubble. Nelson died bankrupt. He was buried in an unmarked grave. Why? Because he promised his life, his fortune, and his sacred honor. I'm telling you that today because your children and their children will not be taught that in school by revisionists. They don't want your kids to know the greatness of who United States of America is. And they will tell our children and our grandchildren that our founding fathers were greedy, ungodly, and racist. And America isn't a great nation. And that is a lie from the pit of hell.